Hi, my name is Lena. Welcome to my channel, and I'd like to talk to you about a book by Marie Renault, Fire from Heaven. It's a book about Alexander the Great. It tells his story from childhood until the death of his father, King Philip. And I enjoyed it quite a bit. Uh, I can say that it's one of my favorite books. It's a historical fiction, but it has quite a bit of historical information. So Marie Renault, she also wrote a non-fiction about Alexander the Great, which I hope to read sometime. I do have a book, so I enjoyed this storytelling quite a bit. I cannot be non-biased when talking about Alexander the Great and books about him. When I was a child, I was probably 10 years old, in a library, I saw a book that was called probably A Son of Heaven or something like that. And it was a book written for middle graders, probably, about Alexander the Great. And I loved the story so much, I loved the book so much that I was constantly checking it out. They will, the librarians, they would telephone me and ask me to return the book. I would bring it with me to the library. I would show them this book and I will check it out right away. At some point, a librarian has to ask me to leave the book for a week with them, and if nobody else wants this book, I can check it out again. So I was in love with the story, and I don't know why. Maybe the author thought that middle graders don't need to know about all these people from all the conquered lands that were sold into slavery, where they would be maltreated, malnourished, beaten, uh, raped, and so on. So I guess author didn't think this information appropriate to the age of her readers. So I didn't realize what all this conquest meant to people of the conquered land. So um, it never actually crossed my mind. I never thought about it. So I was in love with the story, and I read about Alexander the Great, some nonfiction. Um, I don't remember much about it. Um, and I'd like to say that Marie Renault's book was very well written. It was excellent. I think she tried to study the character of Alexander, study the character, all those people who were closest to him, closest. So she probably tried to understand which traits of his character were inherited, which traits of his character were formed due to the conditions he was growing up in. Uh, for example, she explains why he was quite slightly built actually. So he was his endurance level was quite high, but he was shorter and slighter than most of the warriors, most of the soldiers. And she explains why. So it was very interesting. I think she managed to create this character of Alexander and explain everything about him quite well. Because of what we know about him, those traits that we cannot actually fit together, his cold-bloodedness, his cold, calculating mind, and his passion about ancient Greek heroes, his passion about his conquest. Those are two things that are very difficult to combine, I think, and explain, and she does it perfectly. So you can see the character, you can see his father, you can see his mother. They are very well rounded up characters. They are alive. They are living people. So it's very interesting. And I went into this book after reading Arian, after being reminded constantly that about all these people who were sold into slavery, all these people who was murdered, slaughtered during the battles, and I couldn't help like the boy. I couldn't help relate to him. It was a very interesting story. And if you want to read non-fiction about Alexander the Great later on, if you want to need to know the history, the actual history of this time period, I think you should start with Marie Renault, because you will get to know all the major players. You will get to know the chronology of the events. You will be comfortable and familiar with the world, and later on you will be able to remember the actual historical events, the actual facts better, because you will be connecting them with the story you remember. So my the only peeve is that she didn't do entire life of the Alexander in this historical fiction. I know the next book is A Persian Boy, and it describes the last years of Alexander the Great after his conquering Persia. And I wished she'd done the entire story from the death of Philip and into the conquering of Asia. I wish she'd done it. I wish she had done it. Nevertheless, I'm going to read A Persian Boy sometime, and I'm sure that I will be enjoying it very much. I also will read funeral games um, about the power play and power fight, the fight for the power after the death of Alexander the Great. I am very interested in these events, in this part of the story. I loved that in Fire from Heaven, Marie Renault, she also described to us books that Alexander read at the time. What were his favorite books? And I actually own them. Those were Iliad, the one that we read with Steve Donahue, and those were a book, I think basically all the works by Xenophon. He's the upbringing of Kir and other works. So I'd like to read those as well sometime. I enjoyed I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the world very much. It's one of my favorite books. Thank you for watching. Goodbye and happy reading.